Now I would like to introduce Annie Irving, PhD in parenting. Please welcome Annie to the stage.
Thanks, Julia.
Thank you. I should tell you, I guess, too, that her title of her talk is Living My Values, Protecting My Social Capital.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie, and I used to yell at the radio a lot. I would be sitting in my car on the way to work or wherever else I was going and absolutely yelling at the CBC, at what I heard on the news, at the talk shows, at the Current, or whatever else happened to be on at the time, because I'm passionate and I'm interested and I'm engaged and I have opinions on things, and I'd be hearing all these things coming out of my radio and I'd be yelling back at it. But nobody was listening to anything that I had to say. So I thought, okay, let's try a different tactic. So I wrote letters to the editor, and they didn't get printed. So again, I'm like, okay, so some staffer down in the basement of the Ottawa Citizen maybe read what it is that I had to write and that I had to say and decided that it wasn't good enough. It wasn't worth being put up on the, in the newspaper. So eventually I found my way onto Twitter and found that there was a place where when I heard something, whether it was in the news, whether it was from a friend, whether it's something that I saw on the street, that there was a place that I could go and that I could share my perspectives on that, and that I had the opportunity then to actually engage in a conversation with people about it, rather than there being this one-way conversation coming to me from the mainstream media. And I've absolutely loved that journey. And I find it interesting sometimes to listen and to see what it is that people are tweeting about. And, you know, as with the radio earlier, sometimes those things do affect me, and I do feel like there's a reply that I need to put back, whether that is an opinion or whether it's a question. And one particular event that some of you may remember from a couple of years back, there was a group of bloggers who had all been invited by Nestle to go down to California to visit the sort of Nestle USA headquarters and to learn about their products and what it is that they do. And so a couple of bloggers had started sort of, you know, mentioning, oh, they're going to see Nestle, they're going to see Nestle. Do they know about all the things that Nestle does? And so eventually I just put out a tweet and I said, you know, Nestle family bloggers, what are you going to ask Nestle about their unethical formula marketing practices in the third world? And, you know, some of them didn't answer. Some of them answered back and they said, well, what would you like me to ask? And that's where that opportunity then, that engagement came in. So rather than me having to yell at my radio about the fact that Nestle was marketing to these people and that no one was hearing about the bad things that they do, I had the opportunity to spell out some questions and to give them some information and to provide them with some context that they could then take to that meeting that they were going to. So I wrote an open letter to the Nestle family bloggers on my website, on my blog, and I shared that on Twitter with them, with the rest of the world, and opened up the door for a conversation about what it is that they were doing. So that was one you know, example of where I was able to engage in a conversation that otherwise might not have been there. You know, a number of people have talked about causes and so on today, and all the good causes, and the tweet this, and someone will donate 10 cents here, or whatever else it might be. There was one night I was on Twitter, and Kraft was doing a promotion. It was a share a little comfort, tweet the blue box hashtag, and we'll give 1 box of Kraft dinner to a shelter, or to the food bank, or whatever it might be. And everyone was jumping on this and going, blue box, blue box, blue box, share a little comfort. And somehow with, you know, the research that I'd done through food security and that type of thing in the past, it just didn't hit right for me, because I knew that for those of us who have enough money to be able to feed our families every single day, sure, Kraft dinner, it's a comfort food. For people who can't afford and are going to the food bank all the time, Kraft dinner is not a comfort food. It's not what brings comfort. It's what they feed their families when there isn't anything else to feed them, because they've been given that. And so I started telling people, saying, you know, why not, you know, look at these other perspectives, these other opportunities. If you give 10 cents to a food bank, you're probably doing a lot more than tweeting that blue box. So people are you know, engaging in this conversation of raising up Kraft's brand and talking about the good that they're doing without looking at maybe the other side of what, you know, how else you could do better, and that, you know, the 10 cents might provide a lot more fresh food to a family rather than a tweet that's providing the Kraft dinner. So basically what I do when I see these different good causes and so on out on Twitter is I always ask myself, what's behind it? What's that company getting out of it? And what's the other side of the story? So I always do a little bit of research before I agree to retweet or to jump on and to, to use that hashtag. And sometimes I do. There's great things that are out there, and I will support things like, runs to raise money for breast cancer and things along those lines. But there's other things that are absolutely, pink washing or whatever else it might be, and I just stay away from those. And I'd rather stick to the causes that are actually going to do a lot of real good. Do any of you have retweet regret? Things that you saw, it seemed like a good idea at the time, you were busy, you're feeding the kids dinner, and you go, oh yeah, retweet. And then you come back a minute later and go, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have said that. And I have probably a couple of those. There's one that really stands out, and that it stands out enough that I don't even really want to repeat it, but it's one particular person who was hurt by that one particular retweet comes back on every single conversation about the topic 3 years later and brings up that particular tweet. So those things can stick with you over the years, and it's something that has really caused me to be incredibly careful about what it is that I tweet these days. They say it takes 10,000 tweets to build a reputation and only one to ruin it. I also want to talk about asking people to change things, because we've talked today a little bit about, instead of just talking about social good and feeling good, actually going out and asking people to change things and to do something different. And that's something that I like to do a lot on Twitter, and it upsets people sometimes, but there's a lot of things that companies out there do that I don't particularly like, and I've taken to using Twitter as a forum to be able to go out and say, you know what, I like, some of what you do, I like your products, I like this, I like whatever else, but I really don't like that. And I would love it if you would change that, and here's the reasons why. And a lot of the times the companies just don't listen at all, either because they're not engaged in social media and they don't, realize the problem. We've heard a lot about that today. There's companies that just aren't listening out there. But there's other times when they will actually respond back, and they will listen. And sometimes it's because they're the type of company that does listen, and they'll listen to one person. And other times it's because other people rally behind it. And eventually you do get enough people repeating that message, joining on to the cause and so on, that they will actually step down from a position that they had held or from a practice that they were engaging in and be willing to change it. How many of you heard about the Even Flow video last week? So I wrote a blog post about a video that Even Flow had put out about a breastfeeding mom who's gone to her in-laws, or no, her in-laws have come to her house for the weekend. And her mother-in-law is harassing her the whole time about, oh, you're still breastfeeding the baby. Do you even have enough milk in those breasts? They're so small. And you need to let other people feed the baby, and blah, 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 on and on. Eventually the mother says to her husband, grab my purse. And they run off to the back bedroom. She takes out her pump, pumps milk, brings it out, and says, who wants to feed the baby? And the father-in-law grabs the milk, thinking that it's cream for his coffee, dumps it in there, drinks the coffee, and was like, ooh, how disgusting. For a lot of moms, the video was quite insulting in terms of saying, yeah, the best way to deal with criticism from your mother-in-law is to just give in. And then there's all sorts of other undertones about sort of breastfeeding and so on as well. So we had said, you know what, we don't like the type of messaging in that video. We would really like for you to take it down and to not speak to mothers in that way and to not portray mothers that way. And it took a couple of days, but eventually they did take the video down. So, there are those successes out there that can come about when people start engaging in a conversation about something. For a lot of people, when they end up with a lot of followers, a high clout score, whatever it might be, that ends up being a really big ego boost. For me, I don't really see it that way. I see it as a greater responsibility being placed on my shoulders for me to be even more careful with each and every follower that I get, with each and every sort of increase in my clout score. I have to be that much more careful about what it is that I'm doing, what it is that I'm saying, what it is that I'm retweeting, because it's, there's more people hearing that, and there's more damage that can be done if I do retweet something that I really shouldn't have tweeted. So for me, in terms of living my values, protecting my social capital, what I really try to do is to think before I tweet and research before I promote. So that's my philosophy. Thanks.
Thank you, Annie. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Annie.